Okay, hi, welcome to the next podcast in the ST3 interview series. I'm delighted to say today we're joined by Mr. Ahmed Saad, who's a ST3 Trauma Orthopaedic Registrar in the Birmingham rotation. How are you doing, Ahmed?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, absolutely fantastic. Thanks for joining us. So today we're going to be talking about the portfolio station, which is a station which on the surface of it seems quite easy, but actually it trips a lot of people up and they don't maximize their marks. So it'll be good to get your thoughts and feedback, and I know you did particularly well on it. So I think to kick off, I wanted to ask you, how did you go about arranging your portfolio, and how far in advance did you start doing this?
So arranging my portfolio, obviously, because this year is obviously online, so there wasn't really a sort of paper portfolio, so you need to go buy your file, etc., and all that stuff. It was more just uploading your evidence, and some people actually think that doesn't take time, but it can take a long time, and it does reflect on. So I think everything you put in the evidence is because apparently they have it in front of them when they're speaking to you in the actual interview. I don't know if that's true or to what extent if that's true or not, but apparently they have it in front of them, and if it looks good, obviously it gives them a good impression. So I kind of started a bit early. So I think as soon as I've submitted my self-assessment, straight away I just started organizing it, getting all my files, folders, all the documents that I had, basically just putting them in one file, making PDF files for each and every single section of the portfolio.
And when was it that you submitted your self-assessment?
I think you normally submit, so once you've done your self-assessment, I think that's sort of around this time. I think this year was like 9th of December, so it's similar last year. And then after that, they give you a score, and then a month later, so early January is when you have to submit your evidence. So you basically have like 2 weeks from the time they send you back your score to actually submit the evidence. And I know some people, like some of my colleagues, they just literally just put in a certificate and they wrote, this is where I got the point for it. Whereas I went to the extent of putting every single certificate I had, just in case I needed to appeal, so that they have all the evidence. And then I would write a little statement about each and everything that I've done. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think I use anything else.
So, I mean, you do your self-assessment around December, January time. And in that self-assessment, you say, I think I should be awarded X number of points based on these publications, audits, etc. And then when you're uploading it, is it literally on the Oriel page where you just click and under each section upload a document, or how does it work?
So what happens is, so once you've done the self-assessment, they send you back a feedback. They say, this is your score. Now we need you to submit the evidence so that we can verify the scores.
Sure.
So they have this other online platform that they want you to submit your evidence in. So they normally send everyone logins, and then they split the section. So every part of the self-assessment, they split it. So you've got a section for publication. So they just want one PDF file with all your publications and how you've scored the points there. And then one for presentations, one for audits, etc., etc.
So you had to actually upload your publications, for example, in that section, and just make it all into one document before uploading it.
Yeah, just one PDF file. And they also say to you, don't add in things that you're not going to get scored for, because the examiners are not going to have time to look through everything. They just want you to put exactly where you got your points.
Fine. So in the publication section, they didn't care about you uploading case reports or other things that weren't going to score you points. It was just, these are my first and non-first author publications.
Basically, exactly. So essentially, you put in your certificate and then reflect it on your self-assessment score, and that's it. You shouldn't really add too much, or things that you definitely know you're not going to get points for. Don't add them, essentially, because one, they're not going to look at them, and then two, it's just going to be a large file. It might annoy them. You never know.
And how long do you have to upload all the evidence to verify your score?
I think around 2 weeks. It wasn't more than 2 weeks.
And I mean, were there any pieces of evidence that you thought, oh, I need to get that evidence, I need that letter or the evidence for doing this audit or presentation, and did you have problems getting that?
Yeah, so that's the main thing. As in, if once you've done your self-assessment, you look back and you think, actually, there's so many documents I need to get. For example, one that was difficult was the logbook consolidation sheets for getting your DHSs. So you need to sort of print that off, get a consultant to sign it, and that can take a while. You're in and around chasing consultants, especially if your AES is not happy to sign the whole form, and you need different consultants to sign the different procedures. So I know some people struggle with that. So you definitely need to be prepared for it. I think you need to start getting your evidence as you submit your self-assessment anyway, and then uploading it is a different story, because when you come to upload it, you also want to make it look good. you want it to be structured, you want it to be concise, organized. You can't just upload it, just drop in a certificate and not say anything. You have to like write a statement or something. And then also uploading, there's other evidence that I think I uploaded just because if I was ever to appeal, then they would look back and they find the evidence there. But I know some of my colleagues, they literally just put publication, they just put one publication and got the point for it. And then they went, and then when they didn't get the score for it, they tried to appeal and they said, actually, I've got another publication, a collaborative or whatever, but it wasn't on the evidence. You can't resubmit your evidence again once you've submitted it once.
Fine. So if you're ever in kind of 50-50, just put it on there.
There, exactly.
Okay, fine. And with the, you said signing off your logbook, consolidation sheets, logbook, yeah. You've done however many DHSs with various consultants. Do you need each of those consultants to sign it off to prove that you did it, or just your AES, or just one person?
The way I did it was I just got my AES to sign it, and they were happy with it.
Fine.
I don't know, in some places, like some of my colleagues were trying to get their consultants to sign every operation they've been with, because some of the ACEs weren't happy to sign you up and say, yeah, I've seen you do a DHS or whatever. But as long as it's signed by a consultant, I think that's more than enough.
Fine. And I guess you've answered the question, should you put everything or be very selective? It's just kind of very short, sharp and focused. And if you're really unsure, just to put it in as well. You talked about these white space questions, or the statements that you had to put alongside every bit of evidence. Was that in the actual document that you upload, or was that next to the document you upload, you write a sentence or two saying this is what you did in the audit or whatever?
So it was more on the actual PDF. So for example, I would put the title, for example, publications, and then I would put a certificate of my publication with a citation. So obviously you have like a contents page of, page 1, this is this publication. Then you put a citation and which journal it's in, and that was pretty much it. But for example, for audits, I would put in like a little, just small paragraph to say this, this is when the audit was, this is when it started, this is the aim, this is the objective, the results and the conclusion, and then I put a certificate just to show them that I've actually done the audit.
So that actually takes a lot of work then, because you've probably got the evidence of the audit, the certificate, but you have to write these kind of summary sheets or abstracts to kind of go with it, which can take a while actually if you've done several audits and several publications.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think for the application, you get 2 points for audits.
Mm-hmm.
But I put every single audit that I've done in orthopedics, just in case. This is what I was saying. Just in case if they look back and they say, we're not going to give you the point for this or this one. If I want to appeal, I still have another 6 audits that I can say, well, I've done all these. Do you know what I mean? Same with presentations. Whereas some people literally just put in the 2 audits that they've got the 2 points for and left it at that.
Fine. So was it just orthopedic audits you used, or just every audit you've done since F1 or F2?
I think it was just orthopedic audits.
Okay.
But then again, I've done quite a few orthopedic audits, and that's why I put them in there. But if you've done like a few orthopedic audits and you've got other audits like you've presented in national conferences or whatever, I'll put them in because they look good.
Fine. And I guess the other question that a lot of people have is what counts as evidence? And now you said that you've uploaded certificates, you've uploaded the publications, but let's say you've done an audit and you haven't got a certificate from the audit department. Would your consultant writing a 1-line or 2-line letter be enough, or did you have any guidance on what counts and what didn't count?
That's the thing about this ST3 interview this last year. There was no guidance, literally no guidance at all. They just leave you to basically upload your evidence without telling you exactly what you need to upload, what documents they accept or they don't accept, and even how they look at the evidence. I don't think there's any guidance on that. So that's why I felt more comfortable just putting everything that I have.
Yeah.
Whether that's a certificate, a letter from a consultant, even just writing a little statement to mention, this is what I've done, just so that I can sleep at night, because you don't know how they're going to mark you for it. I know some people uploaded a lot of evidence but didn't get the scores for it. I don't know exactly what they've uploaded, but some were saying my score was cut down. I appealed, I didn't get the points for it.
Yeah.
So that's for me. It was just everything that you've got, whether it be a certificate, whether it be a letter from a consultant, even putting a little statement. That's the way I went on with it, and it worked anyway. So.
Okay. So that's really useful. That's kind of how to actually prepare and put your evidence for the interview. But now if we move on to the actual interview itself and the actual portfolio station itself. Yeah. So as I understand, it was 10 minutes, obviously on virtual format.
Yeah.
When did you start preparing for the portfolio station, and did you put as much time into it as you did for clinical station and prioritization?
So for me, portfolio station was probably the most important one, because I'm not very, communication-wise, I'm not very good. I know that about myself. Confidence-wise, I'm not very good either. Portfolio station is one station where if you're really good at communicating, you can do really well. If you're bad, you're going to do really bad. So it's one of these two. There's no in the middle. So people who are not good at communicating or tend to waffle a lot like me, you have to prepare for it. I think that's like the most important thing. So I actually invested so much time in my portfolio station, and thankfully I ended up doing well in it.
And when you say you invested so much time, when did you start? Did you start as soon as you started CT2, or when?
So probably not. I started CT2. I think I kind of started all my revision for the interview once I've completed my self-assessment and got my initial score. So just before submitting my evidence. So probably around this time last year, I sort of sat down and started properly looking into clinical station, portfolio station, and prioritization. I sort of left right at the end, because you can't really.
So 3 to 4 months at least then, and you started preparing then. How did you actually prepare? What did you physically do to prepare?
So number one, obviously, going. I think I did a mock in January. I didn't know how I needed to prepare for it, so I did a mock interview in January, and actually I realized I'm so crap at the portfolio station. So I was like, what? I'm literally just waffling. I had no structure, no theme. I was just basically just literally chatting things that probably wouldn't give me any points. So after that, I reflected on it. I was like, I need to sort of sit down and actually think about how I'm going to prepare for the portfolio station. So I kind of wrote every single question down that I can think of in my head. I used the IC book, ISC, I think it's the IC book, yeah.
Yes, yeah, in the interview book.
Yeah, and I just wrote down all the questions relevant to an orthopedic sort of an orthopedic interview. So I skipped out all the medical questions or whatever. And I just wrote them down, and then I started writing my answers for it. So I put like bullet points. So if they ask me about this question, this is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And then I did another interview with, I think, Orthopedic Network, and one of the guys there told me they told me to structure it in a certain way that I think worked for me. So for every question, I'd have an example as an answer, and that would be like it'll literally be like a sentence or two, nothing more. And then I would reflect on my answer. So I'd say, oh, this is what I learned from this. So from the example. And then after that, I would say, how would I bring that to the department I'm going to be working? How am I going to bring that as an orthopedic registrar to where I'm going to be working in? So for example, if they ask me about teaching, I'd give a quick example that, I organized a core surgical training interview preparation course. That's it. That'll literally be my example, literally one sentence. And then after that, I would reflect on it and say, so this is what I've learned. So I've learned presentation skills. I've learned how to be more organized. I've learned this, I've learned that, blah, 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 blah. And then after that, I'd say, I'm going to bring these qualities as an orthopedic registrar to the department that I work in to improve the teaching facilities, to help junior doctors excel, etc. And literally I use that theme for every single question that I can think of.
Right. So you basically had an example as your main point, extracted the qualities or what you gained from it, and then how you're going to sell that and sell yourself to being an orthopedic registrar and bringing that to the department.
Yeah, that's exactly how I did it.
Right.
And it took a bit of time to obviously think about the answers and write them down. I kind of had to actually properly learn them, because I didn't want to waffle in the actual interview. And it definitely worked in the interview. Like they recognized my theme, that for every question I had an example, reflection, and then how I'm going to bring it, how I'm going to bring that into the department I'm working, etc. And I think they loved it. They really liked it, because that's what they gave me back on my feedback when I got my score, is that I had a structure, and I was reflecting. I was always reflecting.
Right. So reflection was key. Obviously, you had these answers that were prepared in advance. Did you have any sorts of questions that you hadn't prepared for in the interview that kind of caught you off guard, and how did you cope with them?
In the actual interview, I think I pretty much every question that I came to be honest, I did actually prepare for.
Okay.
But I think I would have used the exact same theme. I mean, if you think about it, there's so many different answers that you can use for different questions. So if they ask you about teaching, you can say I've organized a teaching course. If they ask you about leadership, you can say I've organized a teaching course, and use that same example. So that was sort of my backup. If they asked me a question that I didn't know, I could just use an answer from somewhere else.
Okay. So having kind of examples that can be used in teaching, leadership, management, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So just kind of covers several bases with the same answer, and then you had that kind of answer in your head.
Exactly right.
And there's certain, some people talk about using frameworks for answering questions, the SPIES format or this STAR format. Did you have any specific formats, or was it the one that you've talked about, that example one?
So for the SPIES, it's more for questions that they ask you, like more of the, the tricky sort of non-technical questions, like drunk consultant or whatever. They didn't ask any of these in the interviews. I don't think anyone actually got asked these questions.
Okay.
I doubt they would ask these questions in the interviews, especially if it's only 10 minutes. Only because they asked me literally in the interview, portfolio station, 10 minutes, 4 questions. That's all they asked me.
Okay.
And when I ended the interview, they actually said to me, "We had no more questions. You've answered all the questions." So it was literally just 4 questions. And it literally goes, like you start and you finish in 10 minutes, but it feels like a minute, basically. So quick.
And how many actual questions did they ask you in that 10 minutes?
Just 4. Literally just 4 questions. Yeah. Literally just 4 questions. The common question that I think they asked everyone is COVID, and how has that affected your training?
Affected your training. Sure. Yeah. And that's going to be an obvious one probably for the next year or even longer than that, unfortunately.
That's definitely going to come up. So that's the question that you need to write
down. Exactly. If there's one question you're going to prepare for that one. There are obviously different types of questions. So you have those types of questions about, your training and the NHS structure and management. You have the other types of questions about audits, research, leadership, etc. And then you have different sorts of questions as well about different parts of the NHS. Was it mainly focused on kind of your portfolio audits, stuff that you've uploaded, or was it these kinds of, management and NHS pressures, etc. type questions?
It was definitely more about your portfolio. If anything, it was more about your self-assessment. Why have you scored yourself this? Or you've done a lot of research to tell us about your research, tell us about your audits.
Sure.
And obviously the audit question. Despite this, I still sat down and learned all the other questions, like NHS pressures and the management questions. I did sit down and learn them.
Yeah.
Because you never know, they can still come up. I don't know anyone who actually had any of these questions from everyone that I know who's got a number and who sat the interview. But I would still prepare for them, because you never know, what can come up in the interview.
Yeah. And were there any sections that you thought were more important than others, or you looked at the self-assessment and said you can get more points for this section, so I'm going to spend more time preparing for this? Or was it just you would spend this equal time on audits, portfolio, research, etc.?
I think so. This is probably more of a question for people who are applying next year, maybe, right? As in like what they should start doing from now. I think my advice would be to focus on things that you can get points on, rather than things that you can't, it's impossible to get a point on. A publication can take ages, an audit can take literally a week. So if you've not got the points for audit, focus on getting the audit done. Similarly with a presentation, it can be difficult to get a presentation. So focus on something, focus on anything else that you think you can actually maximize your scores in, rather than fluster on one part of the section and then miss out on easy marks.
Yeah.
That would probably be my advice. So I know some people who are applying for this year, and at the start of the year, I was just saying, listen, forget the publication, try get your audits, try get your presentations, try get your DHSs, just get easy points. A lot of people turn up, for example, to this interview without a single publication, and they still get a number. So you can always, as long as you've got an interview, you'll be good. You can smash the interview. It's just getting that interview, I think, for me.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess the other thing is, when it comes to interview, a lot of people turn up, they've obviously prepared very hard for their portfolio station, and it can sometimes seem a bit robotic. So did you have any ideas about how to make your answers sound, spontaneous or interesting?
Yeah, so definitely that's definitely something that I think they mentioned also in some of the courses I went. Some people sound very robotic, like monotonic, basically. And you kind of want to make it sound personal. Obviously, you don't want to make it sound like you've rehearsed it as well. I think the best way to do that is probably when you do learn your answers, don't learn them off by heart. That's one thing. Something I thought I might have to do, just learn it off. Just like literally learn it off by heart. But and then at the same time, when you're in the actual interview, I think you just need to be a little bit more relaxed and just talk a little bit more freely, rather than it's like having a chat sort of thing, rather than having an exam. Like sometimes you're in exam mode, you're sitting there, you're all nervous. But actually, after the first questions, I was a bit nervous, but after that, I actually just opened up. I was more relaxed. And I was just literally just talking to them and telling them, oh yeah, this is what I did. And then sometimes they would cut me through and say, oh, so you did this audit or you did this project. Oh, so tell us a little bit about this. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I did this one. And it was good, it was really, I enjoyed it. And then you go back and try and learn it, go back to your answers again.
Yep.
So I think it's just being a little bit more relaxed maybe, and make it more personal. There's nothing wrong with saying and these sort of things. Although you think it sounds bad, it actually doesn't sound bad. It sounds personal. It sounds like you've not rehearsed the answers, rather than just literally vomiting the whole answer out at the end. I think that doesn't look good in the interview.
I guess those silences where you're thinking kind of feels probably like a lifetime to you, but it's probably in a short period of time for them. But I guess there's that balance between not sitting there and just saying all the time versus having some sort of answer and some sort of structure.
Exactly, definitely.
So I guess overall, what do you think the biggest mistake is that people make when doing their portfolio station?
I think the biggest mistake is not preparing. I know a lot of people think they can come up to the interview and then just waffle or just speak freely. If they ask you about an audit, some people I've done some mock interviews as well, and some people you ask them about an audit and they would go on and on and on about the audit, giving an example. I've done this and then we did this and then that, and they don't care about your example. They don't care about the audit. They want a structure. I think for every question there's a structure. So like for the audit question, they just want to know if you know how to do an audit. They don't really care what the audit is. They just want to know that you know the audit theme, the audit structure. And similarly to publications, they don't want to know about every single publication that you've done and how amazing it is. They just want to know that you've done publications and you know how to do a publication, you know how to write a paper.
Yeah.
So that's not something that that's not something that you have to prepare for. You can't just come and just speak about it. You have to prepare for it.
Yeah. So it's just kind of getting to the point and not just waffling around it, just saying it and then just moving on and staying quiet once you've said your thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's also, again, like I keep saying this, but it's not, they don't care about your examples. They don't care about, how amazing you are. They just want to know that you know how to do an audit, you know how to do a publication, or you're at least getting involved. Even if you've not done a publication, they can sometimes say to you, like, why have you not done a publication? They just want to know if you know how to do a publication. They don't really care that you've not done it. They just want to know that, well, I've not done a publication, but I know that it involves this, 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 and this. They just want to know that you're actually good to be an orthopaedist, that you're involved in research, etc.
Were there any of these sort of negative questions? I noticed what your weakness is, or you haven't done this, or why haven't you done this?
Yeah, there was. I think a few. Thankfully, I didn't get asked that question because they're probably the most difficult ones. But I prepared for them as well, and I think the answer for every negative question is that you have to sort of turn it into a positive somehow.
Yeah.
If you're not done a publication, you can somehow turn that into a positive and say, I've not done one, but I'm doing one at the moment, and I know it involves this and this and this. Or I've not done a publication because I've invested more time in teaching, for example. I prepared answers for these negative questions. And I think the other thing is important is that a lot of people, like, for example, like me, you tend to shy away from saying, I've done this and I've done that. I'm really good at this and I'm really good at that. I'm not that kind of person to say, hey, I'm actually smashing, I'm the best. But that's what you say in the interview. You have to kind of say, I'm good at this. I've done a lot of this. I think I'm really good at communicating. I think I'm amazing at this. You have to kind of show off yourself. Yeah. And I think if you don't practice and if you don't prepare for that, it's difficult to say that. I know some people end up in the interview saying, oh, unfortunately, I didn't do that. That's like the worst thing that you can say in the interview. I think at the end of the day, it all just comes down to preparation, preparing your answers and knowing exactly what you're going to say rather than just leave it at the interview. Yeah. Performance station, I was going to say, Arham, is probably the most important one. It's 50 marks. Yeah. And it's counted also with your self-assessment. Clinical station, everyone is going to smash. Everyone's going to be good in a clinical station unless you're, unless you don't want to be an orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah, a lot of people that's what they enjoy is orthopedics, and it's easy to kind of sit down and read about supercontract practice and so on.
Exactly. Same with the prioritization. A lot of practice, and a lot of people end up doing okay in the prioritization question. It's a portfolio one that people usually mess up in because they think, I'm just going to go in and talk about myself. But that's not how you get. That's not how you get marked. That's not how you get
the points. And I guess, kind of coming to the final question, is probably related to that. What's your single biggest piece of advice to people who are coming up to the portfolio station in their preparation and also in actually doing the station?
I think my biggest advice is prepare early, write your questions down, and develop a structure. That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
And you'll smash the interview.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's what's coming across is that it's an active process, not like a passive that you just kind of rock up and you know, say a few answers. Even if you have got lots of things to talk about, it's an active sit down, you actually put the effort and time to prepare for it.
I put more effort in preparing for the portfolio station than I did for the clinical and prioritization, definitely.
I guess the clinical and prioritization, to an extent, you do at work. You do orthopedics at work. You look at list structure and preparation. Whereas portfolio, you don't. Doctors are quite uncomfortable about saying, you know, I'm amazing. I did this. I did that.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Clinical is revision. You just need to revise. You don't need to learn anything new. You just literally just revising. But portfolio, you don't know a lot about yourself until you start preparing for it, I think.
It's going to sound like the cliche. You got to know yourself. You got to know. You got to find yourself and know all about yourself. I think that's so true. Actually, I found exactly the same, and it's actually quite difficult talking about yourself. You know, it should be the easiest thing possible, you know, ever, because you don't have to revise anything. It's your own life. It's what you've done. But people somehow struggle and you know, really to get out the key points and facts. And you've got such a narrow 10-minute window to do that as well, that you can't really have time where you're wasting.
Exactly. And it's quick, you know, like 10 minutes, they will stop you. They'll say to you, 10 minutes is done. Even if you're in the middle of answering a question, they will stop you and say to you, it's done. We're moving on to the next station. So you need to, obviously, you need to keep track of your time. Your answers can't be too long as well. I think that's one thing I practice, which I didn't mention. I made sure that my answers were less than 2 minutes, 1:30 max. After that, I'll stop. Any answer that was too long, I would just change it or try rearrange it.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people say that the interview is this magic period of time after which the interviewers just kind of zone out and lose attention. So if you're waffling on, then you've probably lost them. And after you finish your station, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had the same interviewers for the next station, just kind of flowed into the next station, did it not?
Yeah. So literally, it's the same interviewers. You don't move anywhere. You finish the first station, and next thing you know, they're like, fine, next station. And then they just literally just drop the clinical station at you. So they don't even prepare you and say, this is a clinical station. They say to you, right, portfolio is done. You know, you've got a lady who's 19, she's pregnant, she's got numbness or whatever. And then you just start your clinical station. So you don't have time to actually move from.
The kind of switch between the two.
No time to switch. Literally, you're on it straight away.
Fine.
And usually, the thing is, I was also going to say, usually the portfolio station is the first station in the interview, right?
Yeah.
And that sets the tone, so it shows who you are. So if you rock up to the portfolio station, and they already think you're amazing, clinical will literally just fly by. You'll find that they're so much more nicer to you, and they already know that, you know, they're already giving you the points. So that anything you say, they just give you a point for. So I think if you rock up to the portfolio station and you set the tone that, you know, I'm going to smash this, I'm doing really well, straight away, the rest of the interview will be fine.
I don't think they're allowed to kind of prejudge you based on other stations, because obviously in the real face-to-face interview, you'd be moving physically around, but they're like human nature. There's probably some level of, you know, thinking that, you know,
there's definitely human nature, 100%. Like, you think, yeah, they've got a marking scheme and they tick you off and everything, but at the end of the day, it's human nature. They will look, if you start your portfolio station and you just sound crap.
Yeah.
This guy doesn't know anything anyway. And then they might just criticize you for any little thing that, you know, any little thing that you say, they might criticize you for it. You never know these things. Like you said, it's human nature at the end of the day. And that's something that they mentioned in the interviews, that at the end of the day, you set the tone at the start of the stage, and if they think you're an idiot, then you're obviously not going to do well.
I agree absolutely. Listen, is there anything else you'd want to say before we wrap things up about to anyone about how to prepare, or have you already said it all?
I think we've probably mentioned most of the important stuff. I'll just say, yeah, just prepare early, and honestly, like, if you go into this portfolio station and you do good, the rest of the interview will flow very nicely. That's how I felt anyway. I started off very nervous, but then after that, I kind of took my time with the portfolio station. I answered all the questions. They were happy with my answers. And then after that, I felt much more comfortable moving to the clinical and prioritization. If you flop in the portfolio station, you move into the clinical, all you're going to be doing is thinking about your portfolio station.
Sure.
Concentrate. And next thing you know, the half an hour, which
goes gone.
10 minutes, is literally gone. Yeah. And
especially as you don't have that time to kind of reset yourself. You're just there into the next station. So you can't even kind of process what, you know, you've just done. It's hard to kind of let go of that, you know, lag of what's happened before. So I absolutely agree. Listen, Ahmed, it's been fantastic speaking to you. Thank you so much for giving your time. I know it's going to help a lot of people. Yeah, thank you a lot.
Thank you for having me, Arham.